welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I am Deborah Gilbert, your host, and thank you so much for being here with me today. I greatly appreciate it. Today we have a fabulous program for you. We have a wonderful program that's on this television channel called The Poetry of Immigrants, which will soon be known as The Art of Poetry. And I have the executive producer and host as my guest today, Frank Crowley. And Frank, thank you so much for being here today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Deborah. We're old colleagues now.
Yes, we are. We are.
How wonderful is that? And
I know.
We have this studio in common.
Yes, we do.
I was thrilled when you said you were going to bite the bullet, jump in.
And your show is Mondays at 8 o'clock.
Yep.
How long have you been doing your program?
We've done it 3 years. We've been around the world 3 times and visiting countries virtually, reading poems, but also enjoying the general culture, food, dancing, music. So it's been poetry of immigrants, but it's been cultural history too. Isn't that wonderful?
Tell the viewer about the show. What is it all about, and how did you create it?
I got the idea. It was a light bulb 3 years ago, January, that just popped because I was so concerned about the plight of immigrants coming into this country. So immigrants, let me stretch that. What can we do for immigrants who've come to this country, who bring their own language, culture, cooking, how wonderful, and hit a sort of a barrier of everything, language, mores, habits. So I said, everybody has language in common. Everybody has poetry as a love, music, dancing. Let's celebrate culture of countries around the world through the immigrants that have come here. So 30 years ago at the Muffin Corner, there were just us locals sitting there, writing away, maybe having a cup of coffee. 30 years later, there were all these people from all over the world in Westbrook. Let's celebrate. So we went from Ecuador to Cuba. Oh, that was fun. Mexico. Simply by having a guest come in and sit where you're sitting or where I'm sitting, sometimes two. Young lady from Russia was actually serving the counter at the Muffin Corner 2 years ago. I noticed the accent. Oh, we говорите по-русски, no way. She's on the show. That was 2 years ago. And the rest is just total joy.
It's a wonderful show.
I love doing it. And now, after the 6-month hiatus, we all kind of regrouped, faced transitions, not only our own deep interior transitions because we were alone so much, but also the outer transitions, which are good too. So we're now going to launch The Art of Poetry because all my guests were so interested in, well, how did you write that? What's your process? Oh, your process is similar to the fellow from Mexico we had last week. Oh, what an interesting thing. We have that in common too. The universal appreciation of poetry, but then, the processes are so similar. And then we point out the differences, like Brodsky in Russia. He came with all that baggage, good baggage of rhyme and rhythm. And now we have poets doing free verse. And he became a Nobel Prize winner after he became a citizen here. Lo and behold, he wrote in English and won the Nobel Prize. Thank God he was an immigrant who chose America. It's amazing. And yet, if you look at his poetry, it's deeply embedded in the Russian traditions of a kind of formal rhyme and rhythm that is recognizable to every Russian by ear. So, the art of poetry will also include what the new phenomenon knew 35 years ago. Spoken word, performance poetry. Get it off the page. Make it come alive. Enjoy it. I have a poem about that in there.
And we are going to do that poem in just a few minutes.
Oh, good.
Why don't we take the viewer back to your beginning? Where did you come from? What are you all about? How did you get here?
Oh, how wonderful. I think I started writing some lines of verse, I won't call it poetry, in high school. And then in the first years of college, but then I got very academic in my orientation and wrote long papers about the new Byron, the English Romantic poet, and how he changed in life, what his transitions were. But they were all formal academic papers, which I published in the Psychoanalytic Review and that. So my ear was there, but it wasn't developed until I started to read the poets seriously. And I think I'm a spoken word poet by nature because it's my ear that brought me to poetry. It's not so much the narrative story and the adventures of, the Odyssey and the Iliad, although I love that on the page. But it's more like, this is hexameter. What is that? Oh, and it's 6,000 lines of hexameter by Homer. What does that mean? So I followed my instincts and my natural proclivities for sound. And now I try to reproduce sounds in my poem. I think my life as an academic has been quite a checkered career. Sometimes on this side of the desk as an administrator, many times on the other side as a teacher. And I didn't stay behind the desk. I ran down into the aisles. I taught at Gateway for 18 years. Literature, American literature, world literature and translation. Didn't teach creative writing then, but all levels of composition. And some days, while I was going into the classroom, I would say, I have a very special guest for you today, because part of the joy was bringing guests, as you're doing to me today, into the classroom on topic. So I'd close the door quickly, and then I'd open the door again and say, it's me, I'm the special guest, just to get them awake out of their seats. I loved teaching. I just loved it. And through the magic and synchronicity of life, if you just open yourself to the opportunities after the pratfalls, then you'll find your way. I did, and here I am today. I retired in 2004, and it's not a wrap yet. I just feel so energized. I'm 78, trying to swim twice a week, reading a lot of poetry and biographies, but maybe it started even before that when, they say even in the womb, the child has the capacity to hear. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those things about the ear. The ear brought me to a career.
Speaking of ear, why don't we take a moment and read one of the poems that you've written?
Great.
Okay.
And you'll help me.
And I will help you.
How wonderful is that?
Yes, I know.
It's mutual.
We're going to read The Circle of Light right now.
I love that one. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready? I'll start.
We are so ready.
Okay. Circle of Light, February 14th, 2014. Outside, diamond sparkles on deep frozen snow. Moonlit prisms on ghostly white extended arms of pine tree branches, they bow down and genuflect, groaning in the body's heaviness.
Inside, expanding circles of consciousness cross-sect busy lines. Mandalas grow in ochre red crayons I sometimes hold for John. He draws, directs radiant accomplishment, pride painted over. He adds brown leafy vines like love. Quote, "It shows through," end quote, he says, looking up at me. Green lichen cover concentric circles, then slow. His hand tires. Breathing more slowly, he feels inner peace flow. Like drawn blood, it flushes his face with radiance, acceptance, letting go. Loved ones like silent, heavy pine trees, standing in a closed circle of light round his bed. A diaphanous glow in luminal moonlit snow.
And this is the perfect moment for us to take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I am Deborah Gilbert, your host. I have a fabulous program for you today, which we continue on. It is called, well, what we're doing is writing and poetry, but we're talking about the fabulous television show that airs Mondays at 8 o'clock right here on this channel. It's called The Poetry of Immigrants, which is now called The Art of Poetry. That name will debut in September. And my guest continues to be Frank Crowley. And Frank, thank you again for being here. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Deb. That's a perfect plug. And to be on your show in August, which is when we take a break, usually. I'm so happy to be here because that's really a good announcement that, coming the end of September, The Art of Poetry will debut. But it's really a continuation of the love of poetry.
That's right.
World over. We were just reading something.
Yes, exactly. We took a break after we had talked about this fabulous poem that you wrote. Tell me about it.
How did it make you feel when you were reading those first 3 lines? There's no hint there.
As if I was transported elsewhere.
Good. That's the idea. It truly is. And then I got into expanding circles of consciousness. That's because I was actually physically present with John the last day of his life. And that was corroborated 3 weeks later at a cafe, the Village, a diner in Brantford, when his son came up and said, "Oh, by the way, that day when you were working with John and he was drawing that wonderful mandala, and he was so engrossed and passionate about expressing the feelings he had of joy in being able to move that crayon and create this wonderful work of art. He needed my help, of course, as I mentioned, to hold his hand as he got tired. But his son said 3 weeks later, that was so satisfying for John. That was the last thing he did that day, actually. Then he passed away. So as a volunteer in the arts department at hospice in Brantford for 3 years, I got to work one-on-one. And John is unforgettable.
We are holding a book in our hands right now. Is this all of your work?
No, this is my latest poetry collection. And it has a Southwest theme in a lot of the poems, because I spent, to answer your earlier question in the first half, I spent the last 15 years going every February and March to the Arizona Book Festival, co-sponsored by the University of Arizona in Tucson. So for 15 years, I'd spend, 2 or 3 weeks, February and March, all I could afford. The starving artist idea. But that was my inspiration each year to write. So I would come back and I'd write about 10 poems. And that's 15 years of 10 poems each with a southern feel and artwork. And a lady in her 80s befriended me in the writers group there and said, "Why don't you use my digital art?" Gratis. So I have a lot of digital art from the Southwest, from Barbara Peabody, transplant from Boston. Peabody, isn't that a wonderful name? The Boston Peabodys. And there she was, and she said, "Use my art." And she's so generous and good. So it's a collaboration, just like you and I reading together.
Why we are still talking about reading, why don't we keep going?
Good.
Let's turn to page 8 and we'll do Provincetown Morning 9/22/10. And I'll let you read that one.
Thanks. This is one of my favorites because it's atmospheric. I'm a poet of atmosphere, tone. Like Henry James as a novelist, not that I'm comparing myself, but he's my mentor.
Yes.
As a narrator, he wrote so many beautiful American novels, which makes him, I think, the most important American novelist besides Mark Twain of the 19th century. So I learned from him. I learned from Mary Oliver. And I'm a nature poet, atmospheric poet, tone. So Provincetown is another place that inspires me. I go up there just to observe. And there it was at low tide, the wide stretch of soft, sandy beach just after sunrise greets dog walkers and painters up early for coffee. I enter the painting. You like that trope?
Love it.
Like I'm walking into the magic of the mysterious process of art by describing it. Just off Macmillan Wharf, an empty brown paper bag blows round and round in the rising breeze, rippling the smooth water. Flocks of pigeons circle. Did you know that they make figure eights when they fly?
No.
Neither did I. What's up with these crazy pigeons? Oh, tally-ho! A toothless old salt riding a bicycle shouts to a passing pickup truck. There are many of them on every street. The tile imprint of three-toed pigeon feet in the soft brown sand. Stubby, broken-off wooden stumps of a long-ago wharf like rotted teeth in the gummy sand. The town hall bell rings dependably at 8. Bong! Even though every town clock or tower, school and ship is off by hours. That's Provincetown. A fishing trawler's long blasting horn signals departure. Ah! The Jolly Roger flaps atop one of the many sailboats tied up. Another old salt surveys his landed skiff at lowest tide this morning. He's in tall rubber black boots, long brown leather coat, and he sports a long white ponytail, as long as his brown and white dogs. You can overhear those who have lived their entire lives here. Quote, this is an exact quote from a lady walking by. If you live here, never allow yourself to become jaded over the natural beauty. Where else can you walk home from work on the beach every day? She caught it, really. Glorious weather at Race Point Beach, the flashing rainbows in the spray above the line, cresting waves like wild horses' manes in the deepest breath of the sea at the windy finish.
How did that make you feel?
So transported, so euphoric, so much in the painting, but not a static painting, a painting that came alive before my very eyes. So I was able to get off the bench after describing this and walk into the scene. It gives me chills. Like, this is such magical beauty that people walk by every day, especially the locals, and it's only because I'm there once a year.
One of the things we talked about during the break is your mentors. Tell
Yes.
me about some of them.
Well, that's directly from Mary Oliver. Good old Mary Oliver. She passed away last year to great accolades, came from Cleveland, lived in Provincetown with her partner for the last 60 years. And she's my mentor because she's the master in the tradition of Robert Frost of capturing the moment of magic. Frost poem. The dust of snow from a hemlock tree, dusted by a crow, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had brewed. So Frost, Mary Oliver, and here I stand trying to capture some of the magic that they continue in a tradition. Something like this. I wrote this down the street at the former Muffin Corner. Now it's the cafe. I wrote several poems down there, but this one, I just felt an early hint of fall the last few days. Have you noticed?
Yes.
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 I can feel the difference in the temperature.
Oh, good. And the trees are sort of retreating in their green. Did you notice that? I saw a leaf, and how that green started to shrink, and the edges were yellow and the leaf. That's the thing that Mary Oliver gave me. I would like to pick out some more cerebral poets, but they don't do it for me. Like that wonderful poet who worked for Aetna, used to walk backwards. He was a vice president, and he was practicing the rhythm of his poem at lunch. But he was more into the mind. I'm into nature as an expression of love.
One of the things I'd like the viewer to know is, what is the objective of your show to the viewer? What do you want them to walk away with when they turn off the channel?
Pretty much what today is a gift that you've given me, my passion and love for poetry, and the inspiration to trip over to the library and pull out a Robert Frost or an Emily Dickinson or a Mary Oliver. But I hope the viewer at home will take a risk and read it out loud and hear the music. So the art of poetry will be for all those viewers we've had for 3 years to, as you did so bravely, jump into a new medium, in a sense. Take a risk, enjoy it, let it flow, trust the process. So my role as a poet is to celebrate and enjoy the spoken word, but also to encourage the audience, the viewer, those people at the open mics who are, holding up cards, 10, 9, 8, doesn't mean anything. It's all there for joy and excitement, to applaud the poet who's willing to get up there and read. I hope the viewer locally has some fun with the spoken word, as in verse.
We are getting down to just a little time left. What would you like the viewer to know about what's happening with you in your future?
Relationships, friendships, celebrating the joys of connection. The connection we have as fellow artists, the joy of the experience we've had in the studio here. Both of us have been behind the camera. Both of us have been learning the ropes together. I think I'd like to have all the immigrants who may watch the show, and they do, from Ecuador, and when I have Spanish guests on, to feel good about themselves, their culture, their gift to the world.
Okay.
Themselves.
Well, Frank, thank you very much for being my guest today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Deborah.
And you've been tuned into Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert. Remember to tune into Frank's show, which is Mondays at 8 o'clock. It is The Poetry of Immigrants, which will be named The Art of Poetry effective September. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a super day. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.